Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with How I Discovered Mozart. Yeah, Mozart. This was a toughie, actually. Most people, seems to me, they begin their life with Mozart. Well, that's after I was born, because they had all of those, Mozart in the womb and force your baby to listen to Mozart because, well, I don't know what it's supposed to do to your baby. I've known a lot of babies who I guess had that, and they didn't seem to be any different from babies who didn't have Mozart. But Mozart was supposed to make your baby smarter. How do you know if your baby's smarter? I don't know. The whole thing was stupid. Anyway, I didn't listen to Mozart when I was young. I really didn't. I didn't have the exposure to it. My parents, my mother particularly, the records that they collected were largely the romantic stuff. Tchaikovsky and Rachmaninoff and Beethoven. Life began at Beethoven, more or less. And that was where things started. The only time I had the opportunity to hear Mozart when I was really young was on a Fritz Reiner disc that had Haydn's 88th Symphony and Mozart's 41st Symphony, the Jupiter. Well, the Haydn blew me away, and the Mozart bored me to tears. The only thing I really liked about it was the finale, because it had all that contrapuntal stuff. I thought the finale was fascinating. But getting to that point, oh my God, what a chore. It didn't do anything for me, and so I wasn't really into Mozart. I listened to Eine kleine Nachtmusik. You heard that in the air, it was around, and I thought, okay, that's cute. And Mozart's cute, and that's about it. Mozart was cute, and that was how I felt about Mozart. And of course, I read about how he was God incarnate and the greatest prodigy that ever lived and all that stuff. But for me, the music just never did anything for me until, and here was the big moment, until I was in high school. Now, when I was in high school, I started in 7th grade. It was a prep school. It began in 7th grade and ran through 12th grade. We did opera trips. The Metropolitan Opera did student performances, and we were able to get tickets and go on field trips to New York. Now, the wonderful thing about the field trips to New York was that we got to go to New York. It had nothing to do with the opera. And not only that, but it was a private school. These were in the days, this was before they had they attached you all together with cords and made you all follow like ducks behind the teacher, and everything had to be chaperoned. Nah, it wasn't like that at all. It was a private school. Your parents signed a permission slip that said the school's not responsible if you never come home. And they would throw us in a bus and take us to the Met. And the production didn't start until 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, and we got there at 10, and we were just on our own. Oh, they were fabulous. And the production we were going to see was The Marriage of Figaro. Now, I had absolutely no interest in The Marriage of Figaro. We had such a day planned in New York. First, we went to Burlington Mills. Do you remember Burlington Mills? It was on 6th Avenue, and it was Burlington fabric thing, and they had this conveyor belt walkway that showed you how they did weaving and fabric dyeing and thread making. It was this automated exhibit. You went in the front door and you came out the back on this moving walkway. Oh, we loved that moving walkway. We just went around it 50 times. It's long gone, but boy, it was wonderful while it lasted. And then we had dinner, a lunch actually, planned in a snazzy French restaurant. It was called Georges Rey, and it was Georges Rey of New York. It was a big deal. And we were going to have our first boeuf bourguignon, and it cost something $7 a person. So there were 5 or 6 of us, and we reserved a table. One of my friends, had rich relatives in the city, and they knew that was where his grandmother hung out. This was for old, rich, white people on 6th Avenue. And so we made a reservation at Georges Rey, and we all show up, and, the waiters were looking at us who the hell are you? The oldest of us was 13, 12, we were in 7th and 8th grade. That's what it was. It was the junior school. And so we had our boeuf bourguignon. Then we had to pay for the boeuf bourguignon. Now, we knew what it was going to cost. It wasn't like we didn't have the money. But the way we had the money, we had change, nothing but change. So we had a tip. We had 15%. And so we had our allowances. And in the middle of the table, because there were 6 of us, and the whole thing came to $40 or $50, for 6 of us, was nothing but change. we paid for our lunch in quarters and nickels at times, and there was this huge pile of change in the middle. And I just remember the waiter looking at us going, 15% tip. And we said, oh, yeah, it's in there. It's in there. And so he had his apron, he put his apron out. The other guy sort of scooped all the change into the apron. They didn't even bother counting it. There was really no point. And that was lunch. Then we had to go to the opera. It was like we were having such a good time. It's like, do we really have to go to the opera? I mean, really? And my friend whose, grandmother lived in the city and all that, thought he was a very worldly city person. He really did. And he would say things like, you don't know how to cross the street in New York, because we were like waiting for the walk sign. But no, New Yorkers don't wait for the walk sign. He said, we just go. And so he stepped off the curb and bang, he got hit by a bus. I mean, he wasn't killed or anything, but he bounced off the bus because it was just going by. He wasn't looking. He was looking at us instead of what was coming down the street. So we picked him up and dusted him off, and he was a little bit bruised and battered, but okay, thank goodness. And after that marvelous experience, we went to the Metropolitan Opera House. And I mean, the Metropolitan Opera House, right? I mean, for kids, and that, it's a gold ceiling and the Chagall murals and red velvet everywhere, the cool chandeliers that go up when the production started. I was not thinking of very much. I really wasn't about the opera. I didn't really care. But it started, and the opera blew me away. It was fabulous. I remember most vividly about it. Who was in it? I think Justino Diaz was in it. It was like Figaro or something like that. But the character that really got me was Evelyn Lear as the Countess. She must have been a little bit sort of towards the end of her career. I don't know by then. But she was wonderful. She was witty. She was intelligent. She had class. She had charm and humor. It was just amazingly wonderful. The whole thing was just brilliant. And for someone who didn't know, and they didn't have subtitles or super titles in those days. Of course, we got the librettos, and we had our little flashlight thing. We were trying to catch the light coming from the stage to see what they were saying. But wow, what an experience that was. And that is when I realized that Mozart was Mozart with a capital M. I was never much of a fan for Mozart's symphonies. And when you start with, like symphonic music, like so many of us do, and especially romantic symphonic music, Mozart, I don't think, was at his best as a symphonist, even though he wrote great symphonies. There's no question. He was much better at piano concertos, for example, but I didn't know those. I didn't know those until much later. And he was fabulous at chamber music. But that took me forever. I mean, before you get into chamber music, it's like such a walled off world apart in the world of classical music, which is a terrible shame. Mozart's quintets, the divertimento for string trio, the grand partita, all the wind music, the clarinet quintet. I mean, it's extraordinary chamber music, the piano quartets. Great, great stuff. But that's not what we get exposed to. We have to listen to the Jupiter Symphony. Yeah, I love the G minor symphony. It was very beautiful. It really is. But again, I love the first movement, and I like the last movement. The ones in the middle, not so much. Not so much. I still have issues with them. I mean, I know that they're great works, and I appreciate them, and I can enjoy a great performance of them. But it's a very different thing to listen to, for example, the 17th Piano Concerto, or the 15th, or the 21st, or the 24th, or, the piano concertos, no issue. And the operas. Nobody, I don't know if any of us are born, at least if we don't speak Italian, as opera people. Maybe German, I don't know. I certainly wasn't. And I just was thrilled at, the whole, you like the whole production, the big building and the nice stuff and the yummy seats and the beautiful staging. But the music was extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. And there's no reason why you can't love it. You don't have to be like an opera person to go and enjoy The Marriage of Figaro. It's a great story. It's fabulous music. Fortunately, it's in 4 acts, so there were a bunch of intermissions. We could run out and run around, and go back. It wasn't like you have to sit there for 2 hours, wishing for it to end. It moved quickly. It really moved quickly, and it was enchanting, and that is what got me into Mozart, more than anything else that I can remember. And after that, I was able to discover the other great Mozart stuff. But I still maintain that, we all agree that Mozart's operas are amazing. our great Mozart, but a lot of other great Mozart isn't necessarily where you might think it is. The cool thing about Mozart, to me anyway, was that whenever he set himself a challenge, he blew it out of the water. Interesting things like that divertimento for string trio or the grand partita or, unusual combinations, interesting things, the clarinet quintet, stuff like that. These are pieces, the Sinfonia Concertante for violin and viola, unusual instrumental forces or interesting musical challenges. Those were his meat and potatoes. Those are the things where he said, oh, I'm really going to slay him with this. But in, just the normal stuff that everybody else was doing, he wasn't always that interested, I think. He could just dash it off. And I think if you listen carefully, you can tell the difference. I really do. But you may feel differently. And so I'm very interested to know how you first encountered Mozart and how your Mozartian journey has progressed. So let me know and keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.